Chapter 10 is looking at class consciousness, and I want to say that Karl Marx reasoned that social class has both subjective and objective dimensions. All capitalist societies, make sure you know, according to Marx, have objective classes, which are social classes that an observer can identify by simply looking at people's visible, specific relationship to the means of production on their society or in their society. The workers, for example, are easily identified as an objective class that does not own the means of production and sells its labor in turn for wages. The capitalists are the objective class that owns the means of production and buys the labor power of the working class. And then make sure you know that Marx identified the subject class as the extent to which the people in a given stratum of society actually perceives their situation as a class. For example, if the workers in a chicken processing industry in the South are not aware that their low wages and miserable working conditions are similar to the conditions faced by millions of workers in other industries elsewhere in the world, and if they don't understand that they can improve their fortunes only by taking some of the power of another class, such as the capitalists, then they are not yet a subjective class. Now, make sure you understand, without this awareness of their situation, workers are said to lack class consciousness. Without class consciousness, they cannot form the political associations that will allow them to fight effectively against the capitalist. In Marx's view, objective and social class depends on a person's relationship to the means of production. And what I'm saying is whether the person owns capital or land, sells his or her labor power, and engages in a profession. And subjective social class is determined by how a person thinks about his or her membership in a social class. Now, I want to expand on the subjective method and certainly the objective method because you need to know this. Research on class awareness distinguishes between these two views of social class. Like I said, the subjective method and the objective method. Make sure you know both of these. The subjective method of measuring social class membership uses interviews in which respondents give their opinions about their class rankings. This method of assigning people to classes is based on personal opinions. Then the objective method uses indicators of rank, such as occupational prestige, place of residence, type of home, level of education, and income, which are combined to form a composite index. These measures are not affected by the respondents' opinions. Researchers have found high correlations between the data generated by both methods. However, make sure you know that there is a tendency for people who work in blue-collar occupations and therefore are in the working class by objective measures to identify themselves as members of the middle class. Now, there are 4 different forms of class consciousness. First, number 1 is class awareness. This is the weakest level of class consciousness and involves recognition of the partition of society into 2 or more classes. We have class identification. This is used for taking the step of self-placement in a specific class. Class solidarity implies a sense of unity with and sharing values and interests with other members of the same class. And then class action. Okay, this means taking some overt action to further the perceived interest of one's class. Now, when people think of social class divisions in American society, they first assign various occupations to broad class ranks. When there's confusion about how an occupation is ranked, people tend to think of in terms of other aspects like social class, family prestige, education, earned income. And as they think about these factors, they tend to reach a consensus about what social class they belong to and what classes others should be assigned to. Certainly the consensus is by no means perfect. Some blue-collar occupations, for example, like skilled trades, like plumbers and electricians, are relatively well paid. And in fact, some are better paid than many office jobs. And this leads people to classify the holders of such jobs as members of the middle class, while at the same time they may assign holders of jobs in offices and stores to the working class. So it is very difficult to distinguish between the lower middle and the upper middle classes. Status maximization, this is the strategy of claiming the highest class level possible to optimize social status.